Okay, so I have done a number of different things. And maybe it's a Virgo thing. I don't know, but I like to write. That's my thing. I just think a lot. And so one day, it was like a while ago, I was writing, and this is kind of relevant to something I wanted to talk about, and it's mental health and Christianity and how the world is today. And so this is just a long question. It's not saying anything in specific, but it is just a question to make you kind of think and give you a new perspective of things. So I'm just going to be reading. From the time I was born, I knew I was different. Other than being emotional and not having many friends, I found myself asking deep questions. I could never just be told something without concrete evidence of it being so. This made it hard to be a child. Being forced to attend church was also the most dreaded day for me because there was that problem again. Someone telling me something and then just expecting me to believe it just because they said so. I remember asking my mother and father how they knew God was real, and no matter what their answer was, there really wasn't any proof in the pudding. I continued to go until I was old enough to not attend anymore. My life continued with questions gone unanswered and people dictating to me. And for the most part, when I asked too many questions or directly said it didn't make any sense, I got in trouble. So I pretended to see and believe what everyone else did. But the questions always stuck in the back of my mind. Now at 22, I find myself in the same position, only this time, my questions may stir up controversy, which it will. Erykah Badu said it best, that people are afraid of the unknown. Looking back, my questions may have scared people. What happens when everything you think you know isn't the truth? I must admit, always having questions, always researching and reading everything is annoying, but really somebody has to challenge the surface. There are so many questions that many philosophers have asked that have still gone unanswered, such as, is there an afterlife? Or what is the meaning of life? And many scientists and Christians alike have gone out of their way to prove their individual theories. Side note, I'm not saying that I'm not a Christian. We all know that I am. I'm saying that individuals pressing their theories is what makes me raise these questions. Okay, so back to the text. I mean, not text, but my writing. But to me, they never really proved anything, and so the questions still stand. There are even people who don't even bother to ask questions, and instead they speak hopes into the air. Have you ever heard there's got to be more to life? Sure you have. There are songs and poems and suicide letters everywhere with this statement branded on them. So I ask you, is there more to life? I think that's a personal question, and nobody can answer that other than the one person asking it. But the bigger question, and my main question was who defines reality and what isn't? Who decides that one answer was universal and every other answer is nonsense? Now, before we begin to jump to conclusions and defend what we have been systematically raised to believe and think hurrah, think hard. What raised this question for me is that I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. And according to my therapist and society, I'm crazy. This illness, as they call it, is characterized as a reoccurring elevated or depressed mood, simultaneously having elevated or depressed mood that alternate or occur together with distortions in perception. Now, isn't that odd? My insurance paid a human being with their own background and perception to tell me that I have a distorted perception, meaning that the way I see things is abnormal. A common thing, meaning that what I see isn't real. And here comes these questions again. Who decided that the way I view things is distorted or not real? So you mean to tell me that thinking about suicide or people plotting against me is somehow different from you believing that the government's attacking, or that there's God. And that's not saying that I don't believe in God. I'm just saying, how is this any different? Now, not to say that I'm not a Christian, because I am. But how is it if you talk to yourself, you're praying, but if I do the same, I'm schizophrenic? Now, that's a question for you, isn't it? I just thought about that. And it's kind of deep, and you gotta think about it. But why is that? If somebody says, I'm fasting, nowadays, if you go to a therapist and you say I'm fasting, they say you have an eating disorder. However, you could have had an eating disorder before, been delivered by the grace of God from an eating disorder, and decide now is the time that I need to fast and pray and study the Word of God. Okay? Now, I am on a fast. I'm not losing weight and saying, I'm down to 135 calories. I'm down to 0 carbs a day. Like, that's not what my goal is. As you can see, if you look back on my videos, if you look back on things like that, I'm reading my Bible every day. That is my food. I'm being fed. The purpose of fasting is that your body will get weak and that your spirit will get strong, because you are denying your flesh and you are allowing your spirit to grow. And so I think it's funny how the state and psychiatrists and therapists and things like that try to give you medicines and try to fill your mind with telling you things aren't or are real, and defining what someone's perception should be, when that should only be up to the individual. Who's to say that a person is a witch because they can heal somebody? Who's to say that healing touch is the devil? Who's to say that a metaphysical store is a witchcraft store? Who are we to make those decisions? Who decided for everybody that this is what we label people? You know? So I just kind of wanted to think about that. And it's no answer. There are no answers to these questions. It's just to make you kind of think. I think when it comes to mental illness and things like that, I think that there is a difference. I'm not saying there isn't a difference between the two. It only becomes mental illness when there is harm involved. And it is mental illness when it's like a person saying, God told me to destroy the world. You know, stuff like that. But 9 times out of 10, I know schizophrenic people, and when I have met them and they've told me, God told me to do this, they've never said God told them to do anything bad. Never. So my thing is, okay, at what point is God interceding and humans trying to block out the fact that God is real? That is what's kind of, yeah. So at first, my thing was, when I was little, okay, well, how do you know God is real? And then once I got that answer, now people are telling me, well, you're crazy. That can't be. God doesn't talk to people anymore. Well, why can't he? Now you're telling me that he can't. So I think that's just kind of a little funny little question to ask. Who defines all of these different things? Oh man. I hope I did not confuse people with this video and like raise a bunch of questions. I think I might put like a trigger or a caution or disclaimer or whatever. If you're not strong in your beliefs and your values and stuff like that, don't watch any of my thinking videos or anything like that, because they will make you ponder and wonder about shit that you probably shouldn't be thinking about if you aren't strong-willed. But questions like this, are meant to raise your vibrational frequency and are meant to for you to ask God what is true to you. It's not to, push people away from God or to point blame and say therapists are wrong. No, that's not what that is about. But it was a question that I'd asked myself a while ago, and I thought I'd share because I'm sure there are people out here who feel the exact same way. And so I just put it into words. But yeah, that's it for today. Bye.